Today, as I stand here speaking to you, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I wasn't built for giving talks. I don't think many of us are. But beyond that, I wasn't built for making small talk, for going to parties, or for simply speaking up for myself. And at the end of the day, being around other people can be emotionally draining for me. Maybe you've felt that way before. Maybe you've always felt that way. Maybe you've heard someone say to you, "You're so quiet," or "You don't talk much." Maybe, like me, you would consider yourself an introvert. And one of the problems with our society is that it wasn't really built for introverts. Consider school, something that everyone goes through. When kids go to school, it is constant socialization. They're expected to do group works and contribute to verbal class discussions, or else they'll lose important and meaningful points. And this type of work can be stomach churning for some kids and might not even be that meaningful. And even something as simple as walking through the hallway or trying to find a spot in the cafeteria can be daunting. And kids are supposed to do this 5 days a week for years on end. And what can start out as simple social anxiety can develop into stuff like mood swings, sleep deprivation, panic attacks, and even depression. But it doesn't end at school. And the office workspace, you have this growing trend of the open office concept, where there's no physical barriers, no cubicles, and there's no physical limitations to employees. And this trend and idea seems great from a manager's viewpoint, because if there's nothing physically separating your employees, then they're going to be seamless. They're going to be more productive. But what's funny is that these offices, by and large, have been found to produce the opposite of the desired effect. You see, communication drops significantly, employees' stress and blood pressure levels rise, and there's actually a greater number of sick days because everyone's crammed together and there's nothing physically separating them. There seems to be a constant pressure and expectation for students, employees, and everyone in between to be able to easily talk and verbally communicate. And the problem is that when you have people who aren't so good at that and who simply function differently, that you see them as weird or even weak. And if we continue in this way of thinking, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there will be students, kids, whose talents will never fully be realized. Mark Twain once told a story about a man who looked for the greatest general who ever lived. He looked all over the earth, and he didn't find him. And he found out dude had already lived and died. So he decides, well, I'll just go to heaven and meet him there. So he gets up to the pearly gates, runs into St. Peter, explains the situation, and St. Peter points to this average Joe. And the man's confused because he knew this guy. He was friends with him. And he also knew he wasn't a general, but a shoemaker. And he says, "St. Peter, I think you got the wrong guy. I know he's supposed to be, all-knowing and all that, or whatever." And St. Peter says, No, I know who he was. However, if he had been a general, he would have been the greatest general of them all. And I think what this story is saying, the story from decades ago, is saying that we have a problem, and we've had a problem for decades. And we need a system where we do not arbitrarily and unnecessarily idealize one group while repressing another. We need to find a middle ground where people are able to work in their own ways without being seen as weird or weak. And it doesn't even have to be that big. We can find that middle ground. If you're an employer, then simply see how your employees work best together. Don't put them all into one box. If you're a teacher, have balance in your teaching methods. Listen to your students, because this point in their life, this developing point, is the most important part of their lives. if you limit them now, it's going to be really hard for them to come back. So have balance in your teaching methods and realize that verbal participation is not the only way that students can actively engage and take part in class. And if you're a friend who knows someone, or if you're a friend and you know someone who's an introvert, then simply be more understanding, be more open. And if you're an introvert who feels like you have to change, and this is what I have to say to you, don't let other people decide who you are going to be. It's okay to be you. And maybe you've heard the saying, you've just got to come out of your shell. But the truth is that there is no shell. Because there have been tons and tons of famous and influential introverts throughout history. Maybe you've heard names like Einstein, Dr. Seuss, Steve Wozniak, J.K. Rowling, and even Abraham Lincoln. And without people like them, there would be no Green Eggs and Ham, no iPhone, no Harry Potter, no theory of gravity. It's okay to be yourself, whatever that means to you. Because as Gandhi once said, in a gentle way, you can shake the world.